Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. Having looked in previous videos in my Signs of Ragnarok series at the signs of Ragnarok or occurrences in and after Ragnarok that are described in the two manuscript versions of the Eddic poem Völuspá, in this video I'm going to look at the signs of Ragnarok as discussed in the poem Vafthrudnismal. And for those of you interested in such things, we're going to have a little mini Ragnarok behind us here as the hummingbirds fight over this feeder. At this elevation, this time of summer in Colorado, these are all broad-tailed hummingbirds for those who are into such things. So Vafthrudnismal has come up in a few videos recently. I do have a video in which I read the entire thing, much like I have videos in which I read several other Eddic poems in their entirety, Völuspá, Hávamál, Lokasenna, etc. The gist of the poem is that Odin goes to a Jotun, often translated giant. I've preferred the term anti-god in recent years. At any rate, one of the enemies of the gods, named Vafthrudnir, whose name you could take very literally as something like web strengthener. The web in question is probably webs of words, so riddle weaver I think is a pretty acceptable English version of that name. And Odin and Riddle Weaver compete to see who can answer more questions of mythological trivia by the other, to the other's satisfaction. Lots of words for mental capacities or mental tricks or games, riddle, wisdom, etc. all kind of overlap in Old Norse in a way they don't in English. So don't expect any of these to really be riddles per se. But unlike Grímnismál, a very similar dialogue poem in the Poetic Edda, in which Odin shares a lot of commentary about other places in the Norse mythic cosmos, Vafthrudnismal mostly concerns other times, so either the beginning or the end, although some contemporary things. The stuff about the end is sort of scattered, as both Odin and Vafthrudnir ask each other about it, so you get some stuff that's a little bit early, some stuff that's a little bit late, but then even the late stuff in the poem is mixed in with some stuff that doesn't really apply to Ragnarok. Alright, so the first mention of anything related to Ragnarok is in stanza 17. Vafthrudnir asks Odin, and I'm just going to skip the first half of these question stanzas because they're repeated throughout the entire poem. Hve så vollur heitir finnask vigi at, surtr och en swasugóð. How that valley is named, the one where Surtur, one of the great enemies of the gods, a kind of fire demon figure who may or may not be a Jotun, or Surtur and the happy gods will find one another at battle. Surtur will fight the gods at Ragnarok, so this is clearly a reference to Ragnarok. Odin says in 18, Vigriðr heitir vollur, finnask vigi at, Surtur och en swasugóð. 100 rasta han á hverjan veg, så þeim volar vitaðar. And sorry if you're hearing, grunting and bellows over here. There's a bunch of cattle just over on that side. Alright, so Vigriðr is the name of the valley where Surtur and the bright, or the happy gods will find one another at battle, will fight. The valley, he, because it's masculine han, is in every direction, a hverjan veg, 100 rosts. So rost is a long unit of measurement. We might take it as roughly equivalent to a mile. It might actually quite likely be longer than a mile. Whoa. That was one of the male broadtails doing a very aggressive display to a female, and it was right at my bare foot. Alright, so Vigridur's named the valley where they'll fight. Oh yeah, the rust thing. So we don't exactly know how long a rust should be taken to be. But it's huge, right? 100 miles or something much longer than 100 miles in every direction. That valley, Solvolur, is known to them, every other thing. Now, curiously, there is a different tradition of what this valley where the gods and their enemies will fight at Ragnarok is named. In Vafþrúðnismal, of all places, the poem in the Poetic Edda where the hero Sigurður is talking to the dragon Vafthrudnir that he's just killed, Vafthrudnir says the valley is called Óskap or Óskopnir, depending on whether you go with what he says in the Poetic Edda or in the stanza as it's quoted in the Saga of the Volsungs. So, different traditions about what this place is called. Another kind of isolated stanza that gets into Ragnarok stuff is 38. Again, I'm going to skip the first part of the question because each one of the questions repeats a lot of the question parts. Odin asks, Hvaðan njörður kom með ossasonum, hofum og horgum, hann ræður hunnmorgum, og varðat hann ossum alin. So, from where did Njörður come among the sons of the Aesir? He rules many hundreds of temples and altars, and he was not born among the Aesir. So it's kind of a vexed question exactly what the difference between Aesir gods and Vanir gods is. But clearly in Vafþrúðnismál it matters, and Njörður is from this other group of gods, although he lives among the Aesir. So Vafthrudnir responds in 39, and this is where we get the Ragnarok connection. I Vanaheimi skopu hann vís regin og seldu at gíslingu góðum. I aldarök hann mun afturkoma heim með vísum vonum. So wise gods, Vísregin, shaped him, created him in Vanaheimr, home world of the Vanir, and they gave him to gods, Góðum, as a hostage at Gíslingu. So notice we have two very general words for gods here, Regin and Góðum, which can be applied to Aesir and or Vanir, but in this case, the Regin under discussion are all Vanir, and the Góðum under discussion are all Aesir, so that's a little confusing. At the end of the age, Aldaruk, he will come back, han mun koma aftur, home among the wise Vanir, heim með vísum vonum. So this is the only trace I've ever seen of a sign that there is actually a realm that maybe survives Ragnarok, and it's Vanaheimr. How common this perception was, that this was the fate of Njörður and the fate of the Vanir more broadly and of their realm, I don't know. But it's an often ignored weird little hint that's here in Vafthruthnismal, that there may be a wider variety of lore, or just a wider conception of the lore that existed in late Viking Age times than we're aware of from the Eddas that survived. Let me give you a quick word from my friends and partners at Grimfrost. Come right back with some more signs of Ragnarok from the end of Vafthrudnismal. Alright, so toward the end we get a lot of Ragnarok material. Stanza 44, Odin asks, What lifir mana þó in mera líðar, fimbulvetar með fyrum? So, who among men, what mana lives when when mankind is really the subject here, endures the famous fimbulvetar, right, the monstrous winter of Ragnarok among men. Basically, when it is endured among men. Vafthrudnir says in 45, Líf og lífþrasir en þau launask munu í holti hodmimis. Morgendog var þau ser at mat hafa, þaðan af aldir alask. So leave, life, and leave thrasir, a little bit difficult to parse, but could be something like pulsing with life. Leave is grammatically neuter, leave thrasir is grammatically masculine, so we might assume that leave thrasir is the man and leave is the woman. And they will hide themselves, loinask, in the wood of Hod Mimir. Now, I and many other translators have often taken this as a forest, but that holt could refer to an individual tree, so it's possible they're hiding themselves in Yggdrasil. I thought Carolyn Larrington, in the interview that we did with her on my Patreon, which is on YouTube now, made a really good point that it's a really economical explanation of what this wood or tree is, given that this forest isn't mentioned anywhere, and that Yggdrasil does have a fair number of names. So I do like that explanation. Thanks to her for bringing it up. They will have morning dews for themselves for food, Serat Mat. From them, men will be born, Thadanav Aldir Alask. So these are kind of our post-Ragnarok Adam and Eve figures. 46, Odin asks, Hvaðan kemur sól og in sletta himinn, þó þessa hefur Fenrir farið. From where comes a sun onto the smooth sky, when Fenrir has killed this one? Note, in Snorri's understanding of this, which is really the source of, I think, probably the dominant explanations of Ragnarok that you'll see today, Skull is the name of the wolf that swallows the sun, and Hati is the name of the wolf that swallows the moon. So this is either an alternate tradition in which it's Fenrir, not one of his sons, that swallows the sun, or it is just using Fenrir to mean, wolf or monstrous wolf in general. 47, Vafthrudnir replies, Eina dóttur ber Ulfrodul, other hana Fenrir fari. Sú skal ríða, þó regin døya, móður brautir mar. So Ulfrodul, elf red, kenning Hati for son, bears one daughter, ber eina dóttur, before Fenrir kills her. She shall ride the girl, Mar, her mother's roads when the gods die, þó regin døya. So a new son is born from the old one. Whether we should really regard the sun as a personal goddess or other type of being, or whether this is kind of a metaphorical way of talking about an inanimate thing producing another sun by some other means. Very hard to say. The sun is very inconsistently discussed as either a person or not in Norse myth. I recently had a video made about that, the sun in Norse myth, which you can find on my channel. 50, Odin asks, Hverir róða Asir eignum góða, þó sloknar sortalogi? So, which Asir, which of this main family of gods, rule the possessions of the gods, eignum góða, when sortalogi goes out, when the fire of Surtur goes out? So Surtur being the major fire demon figure who will burn everything at Ragnarok, according to Völuspá. 51, Vafthrudnir says, Vidar og Vali byggja ve góða, þó sloknar sortalogi. Móði og magni skulu mjálni hafa, vingnis at vígþrótti. So Vidar and Vali will inhabit the holy places of gods when Surtur's fire goes out. Móði and Magni must have Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, at the it's almost into my face, at the battle demise of Vingnir, which is the name of Thor. So they'll inherit Mjolnir. Man, they're really going at it right now. Alright, Odin in 52 asks, What verður Óðni at aldralagi þó rjúvask regin? What happens to Odin with respect to killing him, i.e., how does Odin die, when the gods die? Thor regin rjúvask. Vafthrudnir says in 53, Úlfur glópa mun aldafoður, þess mun vidar rekka, kalda kjafta, hann klyfja mun, vitnis vigi at. A wolf will swallow the orderer, father of men, Úlfur mun glópa aldafoður, i.e. Odin. Vidar will avenge that. The word rekka there, avenge, once started with a V, long before the Icelandic of the 1200s in which this manuscript was written. And so that would have alliterated once upon a time in this, the halter line C, Vidar, Vreka, but that's not how it's preserved in the manuscript, so it's not how I present the text. However, it is potentially decent evidence that the text comes from a time before Icelandic lost V before R, which is probably about 200 years earlier, so potentially getting this poem back into pre-Christian times. He will cleave, Han mun klivja, the cold jaws, called the Kjapta, at the death of the monster, at Vigi Vidnis. Those are all the stanzas that I think have a clear reference to Ragnarok in Vafthruthnismal. Several other stanzas, of course, if you want the whole thing, and look at my complete reading of Vafthruthnismal on this channel. Maybe a little bit hard to find, someone pointed out, because, in the title I used the Old Norse title and spelling, which can be hard for people to type. I'll try to fix that and make an anglicization of the title searchable too. For now, thank you very much to my Patreon supporters who help keep this channel going. Thank you to everybody who buys my books, or requests me on Cameo, or buy stuff on the little merch shop on Spreadshop, or those YouTube super thanks. Anything to help keep this channel going and supporting me, and a whole bunch of hummingbirds who really hate each other. So for now, from beautiful Colorado, the hummingbirds are wishing no one well, but I'm wishing you all the best.